Hello and welcome another edition of Coach's Corner. Every week I try to spend some time with college coaches from around the country, and today we're going to talk a little Sun Belt, a little James Madison University, the hitting coach at JMU, Tanner Biagini. Tanner, thank you so much for taking the time to join me today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
One of the things that I really want to kind of get parents to understand is, we talk a lot about, P4 schools, but the Sun Belt Conference is a juggernaut of a conference. Can you talk a little bit about what it takes to play at JMU and what type of student athlete you look for with regard to the offensive side at JMU with regard to getting between the lines as a hitter?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a physicality point to it that you have to be at. The Sun Belt is in the sense of age of players, pretty old. If you think about it compared to 10 years ago, almost all of college baseball is really. And I think that people have kind of lost sight of that. And I think there's been some things between the difference in professional baseball now and how there's limited opportunities compared to there used to be. And now those opportunities at the college level are being limited again. So you're having guys that would have maybe been gone that are still staying in college. So you got to be able to keep up with them as an 18-year-old to get on the field. So you got to have some tools, got to be able to do something that makes you stick out. And when I see a kid and I'm recruiting them, am I excited after the game if I would have a chance to coach that guy? Like we have a young man come in our 26 class and I watch him play and I can't wait till he gets on campus, even though it's going to be a year from now, because he just plays with so much energy, so much passion. Like he's a dirtbag. He's so competitive. Those are the type of guys you're looking for, because when you get in the middle of conference play and you're playing, Coastal, who almost just won a national title, what are you going to do when they punch you in the mouth? Are you going to back down or are you going to keep coming at it?
One of the things I always get this. I have a shirt that always says, when in doubt, be a dirtbag. Can you talk a little bit? Because so many parents get offended by that. I keep trying to tell them, if somebody calls your student athlete a dirtbag, that's really a good thing with regard to baseball. Talk a little bit about that mindset and that mentality and that approach that those types of athletes have that make them successful at the college level.
Yeah, I think part of it is they don't back down. I think that's a big piece. Baseball is a game where you can fail 70% of the time and people think you're a Hall of Famer. So I think that personally takes a lot of courage to want to be a hitter, and you're going to need that. And I think that's part of being a dirtbag, blue collar guy, that kind of thing, where, you're not afraid to go up there and you might fail, you might not. But if you prepare properly, you're going to have the confidence to play with that heart and that grit that it takes for somebody to label you as a dirtbag, Doesn't mean that guy's like covered in dirt head to toe. That's where it obviously came from originally. But now with so many turf fields, you're not going to see that anyway. But I think that just that tough nose type guy. And, I think you hear it a lot different times, but, great athletes, that the ones that put themselves and separate themselves, they're almost slightly broken because they're willing to do stuff that the average player's not willing to do to get better. And I think that's kind of where it comes from.
So a lot of parents, when I say James Madison, they don't know where it is. They don't know, what it's all about, but it's probably one of the most beautiful campuses in the country. Can you talk a little bit about what makes JMU such a fantastic college experience for those younger athletes that are looking to explore, colleges all across the country?
Yeah, and I'm new, so I'm really excited myself to jump on board and get my family moved up there in a couple weeks. And I think a big piece of it is it's the name you kind of always hear in this area. I think when I was at other schools, it was almost like every kid I would talk to is like, oh, well, JMU's on my list. Every recruiting guy you would talk to, they were on the list for almost every kid. It seemed like the campus is beautiful. I mean, it's exploded in the last 20 or 25 years, from my understanding, going from 7,000 to 20 plus thousand. I think them growing in football and getting some national notoriety in football obviously helped that a little bit. But then the school itself academically is really well known, especially for a public school. And it's in the Shenandoah Valley, so you have mountains to both sides of you. So there's a little bit of everything for you to do, and I think that's a big piece of it. Like the campus itself, the student experience, student life, and then being a student athlete there. I mean, we have basically a whole high school gym to us in softball alone. two beautiful stadiums and complexes. And then you have your locker rooms in there as well, your training room, your weight room. So everything's kind of a one-stop shop for us. And at the mid-major level, you don't always get that. I think that helps a lot too.
You mentioned the word mid-major, and in today's world, I am always somewhat hesitant because if we look at this year's College World Series, Murray State, Coastal Carolina, often referred to as those mid-majors, but the Sun Belt Conference with Southern Miss and Georgia State, and I mean, you as a former player, student athlete yourself, and as a college coach, now getting to JMU. What is your perspective now? Is the playing field kind of leveling out a little bit now, whereas talent is going to start to be more spread out across all of college baseball?
Maybe, maybe not. I think unfortunately, I think whether we like it or not, like the money is always going to stay towards the P4s, and that's always going to make it difficult. We played. I won't say what school, but I was at Radford this spring and we played two P4s and we get on the bus afterwards and we'd lost and, talking with the head coach and, we're a little upset. And at the same time, we're going, we just played against a $500,000 payroll on the field. And that's not including their scholarship budget, right? So that can be a little difficult. But I think baseball is that sport where the little guy, the underdog, the guy that maybe you didn't hear about coming out of high school, like he can develop and turn into a really good baseball player. And sometimes the most talented team altogether doesn't win. And I think that's something people maybe in other sports, it might not be the same, right? Like Alabama football against, Towson football or somebody small, they're probably going to lose that game almost 100 out of 100 times. But that's not the case in baseball. And I think that's a beautiful part of it. And I kind of hope that it doesn't go where those schools break off and do their own thing, because I think at least in our sport, there are teams that can compete with them year in and year out.
So I would love for you to talk a little bit about that approach from a baseball perspective. As far as that mid-major school, when you're out recruiting, are you more, is the high school athlete for some of the mid-major programs are going to become more appealing because of the dollars that some of these other programs are spending with name, image, and likeness in the portal? Is now possibly the time for those late bloomers that will find their way to college campuses because they're able to be developed and they're not looking for money as much as they are opportunity?
Yeah, I think so. I think I've kind of laughed with the last two coaching staffs I've been on that for schools of our size, I think waiting and hoping you get the right guy in the portal is scary because portal athletes are expensive, if we're being honest, compared to I can make the same offer to a high school guy. And yeah, I might not know exactly what I'm getting out of him, but I might offer him 15 grand where that same caliber player is going to be like 45, 60 grand out of the portal. So, and I think baseball is a game of anticipation and of reps. And if you can get somewhere where you can play early on, those are the guys you're going to see that are going to develop later, rather than the ones that maybe go somewhere and sit for a couple of years.
Can you talk a little bit about, from a hitting perspective, from a hitting coach perspective, what makes a good college hitter? Is it approach? Is it strike zone awareness? Is it game situational hitting? What would you say really, when you're trying to coach up the younger hitters coming from high school into college, what type of mindset are you trying to get them to prepare for to become a better hitter, particularly in the Sun Belt Conference?
Yeah, definitely confidence first. Like I mentioned earlier, like it takes courage to want to hit. I'm asking you to go fail 7 times, and I'll tell you you're still doing really good. I think if we put that in any other scenario in the world, like if I told you about that, your marriage, if you were right 30% of the time, like making sure your wife's happy, you're probably going to be divorced, right? So, right. But in baseball, you're the greatest, which is crazy. So I think that's a big piece, the confidence issue. And then strike zone and approach, strike zone awareness is probably the first thing we actually work on when guys come to campus, because we're going to jump into inter squads, within 3 weeks, and we recruited you for a reason. I want to see what you can do first live against college caliber pitching before we make any adjustments. So I think that's a big piece when you go watch a young hitter hit, or a transfer or JUCO guy, watching them. If they're swinging at pitches in the zone and they're missing them, that's a problem. Um, if they're chasing off the plate a lot, then that's a problem too. Like, so knowing the strike zone, knowing what part of the strike zone you hit the best, and that's really what we're trying to teach them when they get to us is, hey, you crush middle away, but you always swing middle in. Like, why? You don't hit it, so just take it. Like, you can kind of work from there, and kind of build plans based off what the pitcher has and what we're really good at too.
One of the big topics when I'm talking to younger hitters up here in the greater New England area is understanding that every at bat is meaningful. You have to take ownership of every single at bat, whether you're 0 for 2 going into your third at bat, 2 for 2. You have to take ownership. It's the now present, being present in that box. Can you talk a little bit about when you're teaching the younger hitters, making sure they understand every single at bat matters. It doesn't matter what you did yesterday or earlier in your at bat, that this at bat, your next at bat, is the most meaningful at bat for you as a hitter. You talk a little bit about that mindset, particularly of the younger hitters that might struggle early in a game, and then knowing that they have to be present when it's second and third, 2 outs, and you want to get that ball in play. Talk a little bit about that mindset.
Yeah, and it's funny you bring that up because when I was in college, I actually had a game where I punched out 4 times, and I'm coming up in the last inning at home. I'm playing for Coach Eikenberry at VMI at the time, and he looks at me and goes, "Hey, it can't get any worse." In my mind, I went, "Jesus, well, it could. I could strike out a 5th time." But his point was, it's a new at bat. Like, go up there and attack, basically. And it doesn't matter if, the last punch out of the game or the last base running mistake or error, like, that's not what actually caused your team to lose the game. It's just that in the moment, everybody was paying attention, right? Or it could be that at bat in the first inning where, you went up there and swung at the first pitch and got just sawed off. And now 2 or 3 at bats later, you don't know what that guy actually has because you've only seen 1 or 2 pitches, 3 pitches.
Bingo.
And now you're going into your third at bat with zero clue how he's really going to try to attack you or get you out. Whereas maybe if you would have gone deep in that count or executed the situation to get the runner over or to get the run in, and now we're up a run in the 7th or 8th or 9th instead of down a run in the 7th, 8th or 9th, so they all matter. You just never know the sequence of it. And I think you can't, regardless of when it is during the game, you can't take it for granted. And it's the same thing when you play, right? You don't know when your last at bat's ever going to be. So how do you want to walk away from that? Do you want to walk away with knowing that you've done everything you could to be prepared for that moment, and you did everything you could in the game? You played hard, you didn't take a pitch off, whatever. Or do you want to have regret? And personally, I don't want to have any what ifs. And I think that's an important lesson baseball wise, but it's something they can take with them into life too.
Talk a little bit about vision. We talk about, barrel, ball strike, exit velocity, all that kind of stuff. Talk a little bit about the value of training your eyes as a hitter. Are there any drills that you recommend? Are there any now technology apps that help with regard to vision and approach to maybe soft focus, hard focus as a hitter? I don't think we talk about that enough in the industry. Talk a little bit about the value of having that soft focus in the box and then a hard focus, picking up his hand, where does the ball come out of his glove, things like that.
Yeah, and honestly, when I got into coaching, I was surprised like how many guys don't know that and work on it and know about the difference between like global focus and a focal focus. And now, like I studied motor preferences last fall, and they talk a lot about like you're either basically one or the other. And so there's some drills that are really simple you can do without needing certain technology or anything. You just need a baseball pretty much. So we'll sit down and throw darts, and we'll either throw a 4-seam or a 2-seam, and you have to tell me what it is after you hit it. But then we also get to a point where you tell me what it is before you hit it. Tell me if it's in or out before you hit it, that kind of thing. And it makes guys kind of pick up the ball earlier. And then you can get fancier with like putting colored baseballs up there. I like to lay 7 balls across the plate, and they have to tell me where it was in the zone. I like using TrackMan, and they have to tell me where it was in the zone. Like they'll hit a ball, and then they have to name the part of the zone it was in, and then I'll let them turn around and look at the screen. And then you can get even fancier with stuff like the V-Flex screens that you throw through. I
Yep.
think those are really good. And they're really simple because the kid doesn't have to think. He just has to pay attention, basically. He just has to watch where the ball went through. That's it. And then you can get into tech stuff like Win Reality and all those different things. There's a lot of stuff out there that's really good. Obviously, it's a little more expensive. And then the Nationals eye doctor last year spoke at the convention, and I had met him when I was at Towson since we weren't too far away. He's got a lot of really good stuff about learning how to use your eyes to track, and that, you go to the eye doctor and, they're basically teaching you how to read something on the wall. Well, that's not moving. It's different to track something that's moving. So those kind of things. And like stuff like the vector ball, or they have like a rope that has beads on it that you like extend your focus out and extend your focus back in. Simple things like that, catching a one of those helo type sticks that has different colors, and you're trying to catch whatever color the person calls out. I mean, those are all simple things where you could even take like tennis balls or ping pong balls or something and color them differently. And all right, when I throw the orange one, catch it with your right hand, but when I throw the white one, catch it with your left hand. Those kind of stuff are making you recognize something and making you make a decision. And I think that's a big piece. It's more than just, where's my back hip at and where am I at contact. All that stuff is important, but you can train the eyes and you can find out where your barrel is in space. You're probably going to be a pretty good hitter.
Well, I mean, this is the type of insight that I think more and more families and obviously young student athletes need to understand. Like that little Hiko stick idea is something that mom or dad can do with you in the garage, or you and your brother, or you and your sister, or you and your buddy. It doesn't require a 30-minute lesson. It doesn't require you to wait for practice. And those little tiny development pieces will add up one brick at a time with regard to, from a high school hitter to a college hitter. Next thing I would love for you to discuss, because you bring up motor preferences, and I always try to get parents to understand how individual athletes move. It's individual to that. It's like a thumbprint. Everybody's thumbprint is different, but we try to become so robotic. Well, this works for Aaron Judge, or that works for this guy, so therefore it's going to work for me. It doesn't work that way. If it did, the Yankees or the Red Sox would do it. So can you talk a little bit about the value of having an individual movement pattern and why that translates into how good of an athlete, whether it's a pitcher or a hitter, that those athletes can become? Take an individual approach as opposed to trying to be like somebody else.
Yeah, and it's tough, right? Because we want to copy the best in the world, but we don't always understand why they're the best in the world.
Right.
And how they got there and that sort of thing, and how they found their swing. And it takes time. That's the other piece of it. It takes a lot of time. It takes answering and asking a lot of questions as their hitting coach. And like, I'll have our guys fill out journals in the fall every week, and I'll ask them questions. When we do inter squads, they have to tell me their inter squad pitch by pitch and what was going through their mind, or what they maybe could have done better, or what they did good, or whatever. Basically, walk me through their at bats. One, because I'm coaching 20 hitters. Like, I wish I did, but I don't have the time during the day to meet with all of them after every at bat, and then plus plan out the week, plus go recruiting, plus, do whatever other office stuff I need to get done. Plus, by the way, be a dad. Plus, by the way, be a husband. So those journals kind of give me a chance for them to give another avenue to communicate with me, and you start to learn what really helps that guy click. And we'll spend a lot of time, like, even when we're in team practice, I still love to do group work. I'm sure our assistant that helps me with hitting is going to hate me, but that means we're in the cage from 8 a.m. to 2 in the afternoon, and then we're going to go to practice right afterwards, and but during that time, they start to build their own routines, and they start to figure out what really makes them click. And at the end of the day, that's what it's about. We want them, because if they can do that, that means they're going to be comfortable in the batter's box. They're not going to have a ton of things going through their head. They can really just focus on what pitch am I going to attack here? What part of the zone am I going to attack here? Something simple, rather than like, all right, are my hands in the perfect spot? Or is my hand turned? Is it unturned? Is my elbow too high? Is it too low? All these crazy, crazy thoughts that are really good in the cage, but when it's game time, you're just going to cloud yourself and lock yourself up. So, and motor preference is kind of something that Uh, I'll start with, I don't think anything is the be all end all. So,
Correct.
but I do think it's good to learn all these different avenues. And maybe if motor's preference only helps one guy that I coach this year, that's fine. At least it helped one guy. So, but it helps you kind of get to some of those individual answers a little bit quicker, I think. And it's just another way to communicate with guys that maybe something works for them where maybe it doesn't for others. Like I laughed with them when I learned it and I studied and I did all the testing and all this stuff. And I'm going, man, like I can disassociate my shoulder and my hip really well. And I can create all this separation and I can, squat and get in a good strong stance. And the guy's like, okay, sure. And we started doing all the testing and I should have been the complete opposite. And he's like, have you had back problems? I'm like, yep. Have you had like calf Achilles problems? I'm like, yep. And he's like, mm-hmm. And he started showing me all this stuff. And I was like, okay, all right, you got me. Like, I'm in, I want to learn this. So, but yeah, I think that's important because it's what might work for you might not work for me. And I can't put my brain in the hitter's body that I'm working with. So I have to find something that works for him. And it might be different than the next guy.
Well, this is one of the reasons why I wanted to reach out to Coach Tanner. Is, some of these philosophies we don't hear enough. We read things on social media and we think a one size fits all and what works for this guy works for that guy. It just doesn't work that way. And the journal approach, I absolutely love. I used to do that as a coach many years ago. And you'll be surprised if athletes are taking accountability and writing in their journal, they're able to go back and kind of look back on what worked, what didn't work, and they kind of add some clarity. They're not overly thinking every at bat when it comes to live reps. One of the last questions I want to ask here, Coach, is when you're out evaluating a potential fit now at JMU, what are some of the, not the at bats, what are some of the, kind of ancillary dynamics to an athlete that might catch your eye that's maybe considered a separator, all things being equal, that you're looking at all good young hitters or all good young position players. What are some of the attributes that you're looking for that may really make one particular athlete stand out to you?
I think going back to when I watch him play, am I going to be excited to coach that guy in a couple of years, whether he had a good game that night or a bad game that night? And part of that can be, do they seem really competitive? Like, I think that's important. Do they seem like they can handle the ups and downs of a game? I think at the lower levels, like high school and even in college, like baseball can be really emotional because we play so many games in like a short time frame. But at the same time, if you're too emotional, it's going to wear you out.
Right.
And so I'm looking at that. I'll ask the coaches a lot of questions, their travel coach, their high school coach, if I know somebody from that area, about, what is the kid like? Is he a good guy? Is he a good teammate? Is he somebody people like to be around, or some people that they don't want to see him, basically? Because that's the other piece of it. Like your locker room has to mesh. It has to gel.
Amen.
We won't really know until they get on campus, right? But I think it is part of our job to try our best to find guys that fit together. And because when stuff hits the fan, the locker room that's divided is going to crack really fast. The locker room that's gelled and can play for each other is going to stick through it and fight through those tough times. So it's all encompassing, but does he run hard? Like, does he when he hits that routine ground ball to short and he knows I'm in the stands, does he like Cadillac it, or does he give me a chance to get a good home the first time on him? Like, and I think that's something that maybe didn't really resonate with me when I first got into coaching. And then we had a young man when I was at Towson, and I see Coach Tyner's book in your background, but Richie Palacios, he was a third-round pick to the Cleveland Indians at the time, and now he's with the Rays in the big leagues. And, man, he was so good. He was the most talented player I've ever worked with. It was crazy. And we get done with scout day, and every scout is there. He put on a show for the most part. But, he didn't actually – he put not a single ball like where he got a hit. Like everything was in the air and the wind was blowing in and everything got ran down, but he barreled everything up. But I remember him lining out to like right or something, and he kind of just like halfway jogged to first. And our head coach stopped him after the inter squad and said, "Richie, do you realize that You run a 6.4, but not a single scout can give you the true run grade that they need, because you'll hit routine balls that are outs and you won't take off running, and they can't actually get what you are in game. And that's what really matters.
Right.
And I think that's a big piece too. Or like, I went and watched a shortstop this weekend. I can't tell you if he has a good arm or not. I really can't. I watched him warm up. He warmed up decent, but he didn't really cut anything loose. He got in the game. They dominated the 2 games. He had like 3 plays that were super easy. He never once had to cut a ball loose. And I left her going like, I don't know if he can stick it short. I wish he just would have cut one loose for me so I could see it. And now I'm going to have to go back and watch him again. So I think at that level, they see like the big leaguers or even some college guys that, where they're like trying to pace themselves through a season. Well, if that's the only opportunity I get to see you play and you don't show me what you got, it's hard for me to walk away wanting to offer you, and you can't let the game like bring up those opportunities. Sometimes you just got to do it in between innings, or, you hit that infield pop fly and maybe take off running so I can get a good time on you, whatever it may be. I don't know exactly how to put it, but I think that's an important piece too.
I got to tell you, that's the best. That is the single best answer in all the years I've been doing this podcast. That's the single best answer. I mean, that sounds like a Tyner thing with regards to the foot speed. Hey man, you just hit a piss missile, but they got to know if you are a plus runner, not a plus runner. Let them see it. You got to let them see it. So I really, really hope parents, that last juice, I call it juice. It's great information that parents and young athletes, you never know who's there to watch you. If you're a catcher in between innings, show it off. If you're a shortstop in between innings or in and out, show it off, because you can't control the game. The game is something that is going to flow in a myriad of different directions. You might not get a fly ball in right field. So how are they going to know what your arm strength looks like? So, Tanner, I really, really appreciate you taking the time today. I know it's your busy time of year. I wish you nothing but the best of success at JMU. A lot of coaches that I was just with this weekend at Show Ball, your name came up a lot of times, so I was really hoping that we'd get a chance to talk. But I wish you tremendous success, and if we can ever be of any help here at the Blue Book, please let us know.
Definitely. Thank you. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Go JMU.
Yes, sir. Go Dukes.